Hi, I think we're going to get started now. Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Triolo, and I'm the president of the CU Medical Alumni Association Board of Directors, and I'm a graduate of the medical school class of 2013, pediatrics residency of 2016, and pediatric endocrinology fellowship of 2019. So I'm a lifer. Thanks so much for joining us today at this installment of the Housestaff Professional Development Series. This series was developed in response to what the CU Medical Alumni Association had been hearing from all of you, our house staff, a need for more professional development. So whether you graduated from medical school at the University of Colorado or are here completing your training in residency or fellowship, each of you are part of our community of alumni, of our alumni family. The Housestaff Professional Development Series is just one way that we're here to support you. We have a vast alumni network that you can utilize, and I'd encourage you to reach out to myself or Vanessa Duran, who's organized this event today, about other alumni resources such as electronic library access, our LinkedIn page, our CU alumni Instagram, our opportunities for cultural events, and ways to connect with alumni one-on-one. And so before we start the program today, I'd like to take a moment to thank two of our partners for collaborating with this event. I'd like to recognize the Housestaff Association co-presidents, Miriam Ben Abdallah and Joshua Felton Gillens. So thank you so much for collaborating with us to bring this event together. And I would also like to recognize the Colorado Medical Society, Brian Campbell, who's the CEO of CMS, and Paige Brophy, Director of Membership Services. The Colorado Medical Society is looking at ways to help support current residents, and we'd like to thank them for their help in securing today's speakers. So thank you both to these organizations for your partnership and support. And now a welcome from Mr. Campbell, CEO of the Colorado Medical Society. Thanks.
Yeah, they did not give me a medical degree. Thank you so much, Dr. Triolo. And just on behalf of the Colorado Medical Society and our more than 7,000 doctors and medical students across the state of Colorado, just appreciate the opportunity to be able to partner with the Medical Alumni Association from CU and the Housestaff Association to put this program together today. I think you're going to hear three really fantastic leaders from the Medical Society that really practice in unique ways, and really hope that you're able to glean some information about their practices, how they got there, and hopefully have some exciting dialogue and conversation with them in the Q&A session as well. The mission of the Colorado Medical Society is really to help physicians practice medicine and to do that in any different type of practice setting. And we're continually listening and learning to try and find the best way that we can assist physicians and medical practices throughout the state. So I'm going to drop our email. It's just membership@cms.org if you're interested in learning more about the organization. Hopefully you're already a member, and if so, thank you so much for your support. And if not, we'd love to talk to you about what it might take for you to come join us as being part of our family. But that email there is in the chat. It's membership@cms.org. And once again, thank you so much for being here. And I know that you're going to love hearing from our three doctors, Dr. Alan Kimura, Dr. Corey Carroll, and Dr. Kim Warner. With that, I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Triolo, who's going to give the formal introductions for our speakers and to moderate the rest of the discussion. So enjoy your time, and thank you so much.
Thanks so much. So I'd like Mr. Campbell was just saying, I'd like to introduce our panelists for this afternoon, Dr. Warner, Dr. Carroll, and Dr. Kimura. You'll hear from these three panelists today on diverse experiences in their career development and practice structures. And then we'll have a closing Q&A following all three of their presentations. So please use the Q&A function to submit your questions early. And if you like a question, give it a thumbs up to vote on it to increase its chances of it being answered live. Our staff is taking notes to make sure your question is if it's unable to be answered, that we can get an answer to you. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Warner. Dr. Kim Warner has a calling, taking care of girls and women. She grew up in Denver, Colorado, and is a CU Anschutz School of Medicine alumna in the class of 1995. She met her husband while they were here in medical school, and they have 3 daughters. Dr. Warner taught high school chemistry and coached field hockey, basketball, and lacrosse prior to medical school. She enjoys providing international medical services in Africa and bringing her daughters along to help. Dr. Warner works for Colorado Permanente Medical Group, and CPMG is a med group that's partnered with Kaiser Health Plan. It's an HMO-based model, which is an integrated healthcare model that has all physician specialties, a lab, radiology, and pharmacy all in one building. They have a hospital contracts to provide care at a few hospitals and 2 ambulatory surgery centers in their system. So thanks so much, Dr. Warner, for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm so excited to be able to speak with you all. Like Dr. Triolo said, I graduated the University of Colorado Medical School in 1995, a long time ago, and I did my OBGYN residency at St. Joseph Hospital. I practiced for 18 years as a general OBGYN, and now I'm an OBGYN hospitalist. So I just do labor and delivery and emergency surgeries and emergency care. I've been with the Colorado Permanente Medical Group for 23 years. I've been on their board of directors, and I served as board chair for 2 of those years. I currently serve in the role of the government relations chair for the medical group. I'm on the CMS, Colorado Medical Society board of directors, and chairing the Council on Legislation for the Medical Society. I have been with the Colorado Medical Society also since I was a med student, and so that's a lot of years. And I have seen CMS grow. And I've been able to grow with it, a really great organization for advocacy and practice care. So I am part of the Colorado Permanente Medical Group, and you've probably all heard of Kaiser Permanente, but the Kaiser Permanente is in many locations: California, Oregon, Washington, Georgia, Colorado, obviously. District of Columbia, and Virginia. It is a medical group, so each area has their own medical group: Colorado Permanente Medical Group, Georgia Permanente Medical Group. The original medical group was in San Francisco, so they're TPMG, the Permanente Medical Group. And then we're married to the health plan, Kaiser Health Plan. So we are a medical group and an insurance company married together. It is a pretty unique model. There's a couple other in the country that serve in that model, and we're one of the largest. In Colorado, we take care of about 800,000 patients. We're about 13% to 17% of the market share, and we own our own medical office buildings. So the health plan owns the medical office buildings. The health plan is a not-for-profit insurance company, which is one of the reasons I actually joined Kaiser Permanente. I liked the idea that patients putting in healthcare dollars to the system actually got more of healthcare in return and less to shareholders. Most other insurance companies are for-profit, so they have to give dividends and to their shareholders. So I loved the idea of a not-for-profit insurance company. It was actually an incredibly important piece for me. The other piece I love about our system is we're an integrated healthcare model. So that means in every location, we have lab, pharmacy, radiology. And in our major hubs, we have all in pediatrics and internal medicine as well. And then in the major hubs, which there's 3 major hubs, we have all the other specialties as well: surgical subspecialties, medical subspecialties, etc. So I like having all of that in one medical office building. Our patients come see us, then go to the pharmacy, they go to the lab, and it's a one-stop shop for them. Our idea is that we meet patients where they are, so we try to make healthcare easy for them. Kaiser Permanente was started in 1945 by Sidney Garfield and Henry Kaiser, and what they saw was a need for these groups that were working in the aqueducts and such, that they needed healthcare, and they were unable to pay a lot of times, and then they would actually started a prepaid medical system for them. We are also interested leading in the electronic medical record. We're the largest private sector EMR in the world. When we started with the EMR, we started in 2003, and it was fully up and functional in all aspects, not just in health record, by 2010. Again, like I said, I love that integrated healthcare model. I love that we practice evidence-based care. I don't have to go through steps in order to treat somebody. I don't get paid more or less for the number of deliveries I do, or the number of surgeries I do, or the number of procedures I do. It is sort of the antithesis to pay for care. It is mostly a prepaid model. I love the high quality. That is one of our cornerstones, is access and high quality evidence-based care. And we work really hard to continue to practice evidence-based care. We also have formularies, which for pharmacies, which actually keep drug costs down. And we have a whole pharmacy committee that I can call at any time and ask, what's the equivalent drug here? This patient's coming into me already on this. What is the equivalent medication that we have on our formulary? And also any pharmaceutical question, drug interactions, anything, I have that at the tip of my fingers. What I don't, areas of opportunity for the Kaiser Permanente model is because we're large, we're slow to change. So any implementation of anything is not really rapid fire. We can do that on sort of very local levels if we wanted to change something in our OB/GYN group, for example, but as a whole group, it takes a while to change anything. The second is sometimes our service can be suboptimal because we have such a large system. Patients did have to go through phone systems, which weren't great, but now we have a lot of ways to get in touch with us. Phone. We have a full email system. We also have a chat with a doc system that if you're having some issue, that you can just email or live chat with us, and we can see if you need to be seen or if we can take care of it over the chat. So I really love that piece. I cannot say enough about how much the integrated care, the evidence-based care, and the not-for-profit insurance company really means to me when I practice. My other interest, I have great work-life balance. I have 3 daughters, and I've coached their lacrosse teams for years. I work out. I played lacrosse up to about 6 years ago myself, and I love that my system supports me in doing that. When I'm on, I'm on. When I'm off, I'm off. Because we have a system that we always have backup for that. On that note, I will turn it back over to Dr. Triolo, and I look forward to any questions at the end of the session.
Great, thanks so much. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Carroll. Our next panelist is Dr. Corey Carroll. He is currently a board certified family physician in solo practice in Fort Collins, Colorado, and utilizes direct primary care, or DPC, as a business model. He completed residency in 1992 at the Fort Collins Family Medicine program up in Fort Collins, after matriculating from the University of Cincinnati School of Medicine. Traveling through various business models over his 30 years of practice, initially traditional solo fee-for-service, group practice with Vicor, a physician practice management company, sharing office space and resources with 2 other doctors. He finally decided then on solo practice. The combination of lower reimbursement with more regulation and learning how changing patient food choices are critical in health, he moved to the DPC model in 2016. So I'll let you take it from here, Dr. Carroll. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Taylor. I will share my screen and pull up my slides. There we go. And let's go ahead and click on that. So Taylor did bring you up to speed on who I am, so I won't repeat that. My connection with the Medical Society, I was on the board of directors for CMS for 3 separate terms, each of 6 years. I've been the past president of the local county medical society 3 times for 1 year each, and I still sit on the board of Alumni County. Since moving to direct primary care, it has made a huge difference in my life. I'll give you a couple of positive issues, but I'm also very involved with Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Sierra Club. So in addition to working in my office, I have plenty of time to do other things and incorporate that. So the timeline that Taylor gave you, I'll just quickly go over, but yeah, I think I beat Dr. Warner off with the time when I came out of school, but I did initially start in 1992 in solo practice. And at that time, the managed care was coming in. There was a lot of concerns, and I was kind of afraid as a solo doc, I wouldn't be able to weather the storm, if you will. I went into a group practice that was managed by a third-party system. Vicor wasn't the best decision I made. That really didn't serve me well or my patients well, and it eventually blew up. And there was lawyers and non-compete clauses, and it just was ugly. I shared an office with a couple of physicians. That was temporary, but I went back to solo and eventually had 2 nurse practitioners asked to join my practice, which worked out for a while. But unfortunately, I'm showing you my pathology and the fact that, the transition to things sometimes takes some levels. But I split with those folks, went back to solo. And in 2010, I really had it with all the complexity of the system. And I dropped all my capitated plans. Now, there were some people that said, oh, that's going to put you out of business. And I said, you know what, if it puts me out of business, it puts me out of business. I'm kind of the doc that likes to have autonomy and control. And I really didn't want to work for a big organization and turf that to them. And what I found were, and I advertised this to my patients saying, in about a year, I'm going to be switching to these plans. I had about 40 to 50% of my patients not on those plans that I kept switch. And it actually worked out really well, because now all of a sudden I have less chaos with insurance, and my patients were still mostly coming to me. 2013, not related to insurance, but I started to figure out there's a better way of helping patients stay healthy. And that's, I'm not going to go into that detail, but I do a lot of education on diet. Whole food plant-based diet is the acronym. And when I spent a lot of time educating my patients, I gave PowerPoint presentations to them in small groups, fed them, said, this is how you can stay healthier. There's other things along with it, but changing your diet is key. Here's what happened to my fee-for-service model. I lost money because when my diabetics no longer had to come in every 3 months for an A1C, and my hypertensives were getting better, it actually created a drop in my income, which was very frustrating. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I can do, and direct primary care was fit very nicely. In January of 2016, I moved to a hybrid, meaning I kept my government patients, Medicare, Medicaid, on the fee-for-service model and asked all my private patients to switch. of about 800 or 900, 20% stayed, which wasn't enough to support my DPC practice. And in October, I was really kind of frustrated with all the requirements that Medicare was pushing at us and the hoops we had to jump through. And I said, all right, I'm going in. And if it puts me out of business, just like with the capitated drop, it puts me out of business. And lo and behold, 50% of my Medicare patients joined my practice, and it was great. I said, why am I spending a lot of money at an office that I don't need? I was able to move my practice to my home, and that's where I've been, and I really like it. So direct primary care, what are some simple definitions? They charge a periodic fee. They don't bill a third party for service base, and any per visit charge must be less than the monthly equivalent of the periodic fee. I do not charge any extra fee. So my model is a flat fee, and everything I do in the office, whether it's a biopsy, I repair an injury, I do a joint injection, I do a physical, I'm looking at your diabetes, hypertension, etc. There's no extra cost. I don't have to have anybody bill for me. It just all works out. Differences, I want to point out, the concierge is different. I think they tend to be more looking at higher income populations, because there's a fee that is required to get into the practice that gives you the concierge activity, and they typically will bill the insurance plans on a fee-for-service basis in addition to take the membership fees. Not all do that. But direct primary care, it's typically a flat fee. And if there is, there are practices that have x-ray and a lab. Mine does not, but I do dispense medications here, not a full pharmacy of, but a lot of medications that my patients use. They come in and they have a sinus infection. They have the medications that I've prescribed, and they leave my office with the diagnosis and the prescription. Makes a lot of sense. I don't charge any more than 20% on top of what it costs me to run it, and it's very simple. So there are some differences, but the direct primary care is pretty much paid by the member or an employer. Dr. Clint Flanagan is a direct primary care doc with Nextera here in Longmont, Colorado. He works with large employers and does a great job. Actually works for the school district as well. So there's definitely different things that go on. What are some of the pitfalls? Well, unfortunately, the federal system, IRS, has a law that's on the books, and somehow they consider direct primary care insurance companies the same. There's been a lot of effort to try to repeal that law, but you can imagine how we can get Congress to do something that might make sense. So that's still on the books. We did pass a law in 2017 that protects DPC with the same argument with the insurance company, and that has passed with the help of Dr. John Bender and also now Senator Joan Janelle. Unfortunately, there still is revised statute that says if you're taking care of Medicaid patients in Colorado, you have to accept Medicaid payments. So that doesn't work for me. We're trying to fix that. This is one of the reasons I think it's important to stay engaged with our supporting organizations, Brian Campbell, Colorado Medical Society, the American Academy of Family Physicians, American Medical Association, Colorado Academy. Really instrumental and very supportive for direct primary care. Again, trying to help novel ways of helping take care of patients and also the physicians. So the nice thing about the DPC, it's not defined, and I'm doing a solo practice out of my house. There are others in a multi-practice and large, some working in businesses, working and taking care of employees being paid by the employee. So there's lots and lots of different ways to look at this. The main thing, though, is that we kind of divorce ourselves from insurance, which means we don't have to fight the billing system. We don't have to fight the insurance. We just have to convince our patients and employers this makes sense. And that means that I'm on the hook to my patient, not only to give them good care, but then they have to rehire me, if you will, and pay me my fees. And I charge, the most I charge for Medicare is $77 a month, and it drops from there depending on age. And again, that's all they pay for me. Now, sorry, I switched on, but I still want them to have insurance because I still order CAT scans and MRI scans, et cetera. But for me, none of that is utilized to help reimburse me for their care. About 1,700 practices in the United States, 48 states plus Washington, D.C. Colorado has a large majority of them, but this shows the map. This is on a site I can give you a link to a little further on. But here's the Colorado map. You can see most of the again, the pure DPC versus hybrid, on-site, mobile. But these are designated by Dr. Eskew, and most are in the Front Range, and we're slowly growing. A nice article came out of the Colorado Health Institute in 2018, a neutral source, worth your read. So even if you don't want to become direct primary care, it helps to explain a little bit more. We do have a lot of folks, as this article says. And again, it lets me take care of patients. I don't have anybody telling me how many minutes I have to spend with them, how many I have to see. I obviously have to give them good care. But here's the coolest thing of all. When I left my fee-for-service model, 1,800 patients on my panel. When I was at my max, I was roughly about 370. And that paid me the same amount of money I was getting from the quote 1,800 patients, but I had way more time and way more capacity. Opponents are worried that people can't afford it and don't opt in. But it seemed crazy to me, and it still does, why primary care is in the insurance system in the first place. Why you don't give your car mechanic your insurance card when he changes your oil and replaces your tires, etc. But our system is dysfunctional, and one way to fix it is to maybe change how it works. If you're interested, there's lots of options. This is from the American Academy of Family Physician, free for members. Anybody can pull up the toolkit. And there's actually a summit. Before I launched into direct primary care, I went to this summit in Kansas City, talked to the vendors, wonderful resources to help you run your practice. And when I made the decision, I was fully supported, and there was a lot of help from my colleagues also in the direct primary care. So why my life is good with this? Well, these are two entities, Stripe and Hint Health. I told you I get payments, but I don't have to bill anybody. This is automatic. This was in my email yesterday, showing that a payment of $1,022.60 hopefully is in my bank account and deposited today. That was for a yearly membership from one of my patients. But every day I'm having this happen, and I don't have to have a staff member bill, fight for it, argue with it. It just happens. I set the fee. And by the way, I take care of two families. One's Medicaid, the other is very poor. I don't charge them a dime. And I have many of my patients who I've lowered the fee to help to deal with their limits. I will put into the chat these links, so you don't have to copy them, or if you want to do a screenshot, but I'll put them in, and I think it'll be available to you later. But lots of support, lots of help, lots of definition. And as I mentioned, there's people in the community that can help out. So hopefully I've given you a brief rundown on direct primary care, and I'll be one of those resources to help you if you want. And with that, I will stop share and turn it back over to Dr. Trujillo.
Thanks so much, Dr. Carroll. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about your model, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. And I'm now pleased to welcome our final panelist for today, Dr. Alan Kimura, who's a native of Chicago and came to Denver to join a private practice in 1996 after a lengthy career in academia as a tenured professor. He's an ophthalmology board certified vitreoretinal surgeon and an oral board examiner who treats population level retinal diseases such as macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, and vascular disorders. Dr. Kimura also has special interest and a second subspecialty fellowship in inherited retinal disease and gene therapy. In addition to his clinical work, he's a lifelong student and teacher of leadership for the American Academy of Ophthalmology, as well as formally mentoring the next generation of sub-Saharan African ophthalmologists. Leveraging his Master's of Public Health degree from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Kimura is active in healthcare policy and practice transformation. He serves as president of Colorado Retina and is one of the original founding partners. I'll hand it over here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm kind of coloring, trying to get my video on here. So I'm kind of coloring outside the lines here. So I have 2 slides. I'm going to kind of try to share with you some of the lessons of my career, as you know, my fellow panelists have, and then I'll get into kind of a recitation, kind of the curriculum vitae. So some of the most important things when I'm counseling people in their careers, look at the culture of the organization that you're contemplating joining. What is held dear? Is that scholarship? Is it providing excellent care, no matter what? Or is, you know, there's so many things you have to factor in, because if you don't fit into that culture, you're not going to be happy, and you may find yourself happier working in a different type of environment. So, you know, there's some of these little quotes: culture eats strategy for lunch. So you can have all these fancy plans, but if the culture of your organization doesn't support your desires and for this change, it's not a good fit. We talk about work-life balance. So, you know, I think it very much depends on what stage of life, right? You spend, you know, most of your adult life training. At some point, the next stage has to go on. And again, what does your culture reward? Does it reward only work, or does it reward work-life balance? So that's something you're trying to have to figure out before you get there. Dr. Carroll talked about this, the importance of autonomy versus the advantages of the group, as Dr. Warner is. So, you know, depending on the private practice, the size is very important. And for me, now that I'm thinking about it, as I'm getting older, I kind of want to go from having a small scale to a large scale impact on the healthcare system. And then depends on your personality. Are you more interested in navigating flat water or fast water, meaning stability or innovation? So I've kind of found my way into, I don't know, rubbing elbows with people that are more into entrepreneurship or just the agility and change. And I also learned that values createth the nexus, meaning your weak ties, your relationships to people outside of your organization, your practice is where you're going to learn new things. These aren't the people that you communicate with every day. They're not the ones you vacation with, but they're going to bring in fresh new ideas that your organization and groupthink don't produce. So you need to work on those kind of things. And I'll give you examples of that. Yes, money is important. There's a quote: no margin, no mission. So no matter what setting you go into, I think you're going to have to learn the basics of business world. And increasingly, all of us, I think, would agree, Kim and or Dr. Warner and Dr. Carroll would agree, we are in a much greater regulatory environment than we were even 5 years ago. So all these things, HIPAA security, HIPAA privacy, Title VI, civil rights, all these things we have to pay attention: diversity, equity, inclusion. So all these things. And in order to function well, I think one of your challenges is to become more self-aware. I think this is the greatest leverage for personal satisfaction, as well as with your group. And there are many steps along the way to achieving what, like my peers on this panel, have of true servant leadership, where you're putting others in front of yourself. As we talk about, or you've heard, there are trade-offs no matter which way your career is going to go. Just a quick point here. Some of us older folks, we found a way that curiosity is very helpful in your career to keep learning, and a little humility and patience are good things to have, because as you study the multi-generations, there's different ways of learning and different approaches to how you value work and work-life balance and how things are rewarded. So it's just, I think, a sensitivity for how multiple generations approach work is important. And it's important also if you can find some mentors. Yes, even at our age, at our stage, it's good to have mentors, coaches, because it's continually learning. You never stop learning. So in terms of the trade-offs, you need to consider paths taken and paths not taken. But nowadays, I think we talk about career mobility. So you can have a stable flat water, but you can also reinvent yourself. There's other opportunities beyond residency and fellowship. Some non-traditional ways beyond your MD would be, you could work for industry, researching, become a medical director, you can work in administration or C-suite, like Dr. Warner's doing, administration work, or international aid work. I mean, but that also means, yeah, you can stay right here at home, work in an underserved urban or rural environment. You don't have to go overseas. We also found our paths leading towards health policy and advocacy, which is something I think you as young physicians want to keep at least in the back of your mind, that, you know, after you get your practice established, you might want to check in with organized medical society. They can even help you start and grow your practice. And also, yeah, entrepreneurship. There's a lot of people starting new companies. Okay, so these are kind of things to look at. So now we'll kind of do the more traditional CV thing. If I have next slide, please. Yeah, so after residency and fellowship, I stayed on as faculty. It was kind of an easy decision, right? You're in the main vein, as you know, these are your friends you're working with. A lot of exchange of information. I found that comfortable. So yeah, I'm proud of, you know, the 17 fellows and 50 residents I trained. In academia, you have to wear different hats, right? It's more research. So I did a second fellowship in inherited retinal disease, went back to where I did residency, and I ran the electrophys lab. But I didn't find that environment particularly conducive for the long term. I'm not some brilliant NIH, you know, researcher. That wasn't my path, but that was what was kind of required. I'm more of a clinical type. So then I left a tenured faculty position because it wasn't for me, and I joined private practice. I joined one of my former fellows. I figured he knew something about the business world that, of course, I didn't learn in academia. So we were a merger of 3 groups. But one of the trade-off is I kind of missed the academic kind of environment where we had rounds every morning, the entire department. So quite frankly, I got a little bored. So actually, someone from the university called me and says, "Hey, I hear you're the guy to call for advice." I said, "Okay, tell me what you're doing." He says, "Yeah, I want to get 5 years training, go to Africa, set up a diabetes clinic." He says, "I did a master's degree in public health." So that kind of struck me like a bolt between the eyes, kind of like Saul on the road to Damascus. I said, that's what I want to do. So that was one of the best decisions I made. And I kind of focused on healthcare policy and management. That's kind of how I funneled into getting some experience on Colorado medical side. But started with the American Academy of Ophthalmology's OFPAC, it's federal advocacy. We punch above our weight class, even though we're a very small specialty. We're very well represented on the Hill because there's a lot of issues that affect us at a federal level. Then also through that, I got more involved with our state ophthalmology society, CSEPs. And then with the background of learning, you know, kind of the big picture of how healthcare is organized, kind of got more involved in CMS activities. And with Kim, I'm on the Council of Legislation. We view all the healthcare related legislation that flows through the General Assembly from January to May, and find that very rewarding. I'm exposed to the rest of the House of Medicine, and I'm learning from them constantly. Also, then, you know, the local medical societies, Denver Medical Society, got involved in the Mile High Health Alliance. That's trying to find specialist care for the under or uninsured right in our backyard in Denver. Also had the opportunity to work with CMMI, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, on a 4-year, $700 million project on bottom-up practice transformation. We're the only ophthalmology practice involved. So that was pretty interesting. And yeah, I also I got interested in leadership. I was taking a class on that in the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. It sounded intimidating at first, but I felt, yeah, let's learn more about that. It turned out the most valuable course I've taken because it forces you to become self-aware. And you realize that, you know, your shortcomings and hopefully your strengths, they are laid on everyone and everybody in your team. So as president, managing partner, I'm very increasingly aware of my shortcomings and try to work on that. So yeah, since 2017, I've become president once again, and took us through Lean, or the Toyota Production System. Lean in healthcare is one of these things that started in the big institutions like the hospital systems. Like Dr. Warner could do that, whereas in private practice, yeah, it takes a lot of effort to do that, but it transformed our practice to become more efficient, deliver better care. It's not about cutting costs or anything. It's better care. We're more efficient. It gives you time back. So our net promoter scores have increased greatly, and it's just, yeah, with time given back, I get a little more work-life balance. We also do FDA clinical trials, got 30 or 40 of them. So actually in private practice, we're kind of doing more trials than some of the academic institutions because we're just so much practice on it. There's so much innovation and happening in the retina space. So we're kind of like an academic department. We're 13 docs. We have subspecialties within that: inflammatory diseases, uveitis, oncology, and I do the inherited diseases. We also hired our first optometrist and our first genetics counselor. So we kind of have the autonomy. I can kind of do what I want with the nimbleness and being able to pivot fairly quickly. This is interesting. So in October, we actually joined a horizontal integration nationwide. So it's private equity. Never thought I'd do that, but when my peers approached me, I said, "What? So you got all the elite practices?" I felt as a fiduciary of the practice, I had to look into this. And the more I learned, it went against all my anchoring biases against all the previous models. They're actually trying to raise the bar, and that's what I've seen. They're helping us totally rebuild our clinical research department. Then we can contract better, all en masse. And the elite practices are now my partners. So we're learning a lot from each other. So again, as a large organization, we're approaching 200 doctors across the US. We can leverage that mass effect for advocacy. So again, we can work on prior authorization, step therapy, and all these other things that work on a federal level. So there's advantages to working at scale, is again what I talked about in my career. So started out again in academia, found my way to private practice, the leadership, the federal work, and then now working with private equity. So I think you're seeing there's almost an infinite number of ways your career can go. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. So thanks to all of our speakers today. It was very informative. And at this time, we have one question in the Q&A that I want to make sure that we got answered from our live participants, but then we also have some additional questions that came in beforehand. So this question is, I guess, geared towards Dr. Warner. Is there a limitation in access to services that is not available within Kaiser, like clinical trials that aren't available within the system, or are the services limited for patients outside of the Kaiser system?
Yeah, great question. I love the example of clinical trials. Our oncology departments are all part of clinical trials. So we do actually have a few of our own, but they will get patients into clinical trials. The one thing big thing we don't have is transplant service. And we actually just match transplant patients at the University of Colorado, or if they need to travel out of state. But almost everything else we do, maybe like sometimes, some docs will be out. Like I know we had an extended outage of one of our orthopedic bone cancer docs for a while, but in general, we provide almost everything, and what we don't, we actually just match with because we have contracts on the outside.
Great, thanks so much. And so this one I think is kind of geared towards Dr. Kimura and Dr. Carroll about the need for business knowledge. Any advice or resources to help grow your understanding of business knowledge?
Do you want to go first on this one?
You're talking, go for it.
All right. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a major gap in I think medical's training. It's way too biased towards, science, tech. I mean, there's things you need to know. So I kind of joined somebody that I thought had experience. And then now as a larger group, you kind of learn this, by getting beat up and making mistakes and learning the hard way. I actually toyed with getting an MBA, but I realized I don't think I could pass accounting. So I said, I'm not going to do that. So, I mean, that might be one way I've seen people, they get an MBA, but there's also the experience part. So what do you think, Corey?
Yeah, this is absolutely not looked at. I think, again, it depends on your desire. If you want to be a solo physician, if you want to run your own show, you better know what the heck you're getting into. I learned kind of the school of hard knocks. However, I tried to surround myself certainly with business partner banks and other things that I understood what I was getting into. Make sure you read contracts. The Colorado Medical Society has some resources, but I don't have a specific area. I know the American Academy of Family Practice does have some links to things you can do, but I'd say, check with your specialty society and see if they have some areas where you can learn some of the issues. It gets so complicated, though. There's a point where because I fortunately with my direct primary care model, I don't really have to worry about all of the regulations. I do obviously HIPAA and things, but if you're going, speaking of a fight, if you're going in with the system, you better understand what's going to take you out and what you have to be prepared for. And that's where you have to surround yourself with knowledgeable people that you can trust.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you absolutely must find your way to some very savvy business administrator, somebody with experience that truly knows what they're doing and it has the battle scars to prove it. Because, most of us just want to practice medicine, but, when you get some gray hairs, you kind of find yourself migrating back towards the business vision scale kind of things. But we should include Kim in this too.
I think all of us need some business savvy. I will say one of the great things about our medical group is we actually in our medical group have business administrators who work with each department and looking at their budgets and things like that. So really, my forte is, and I think all of us went in there, is practicing medicine. And for me, I do like the governance piece of medicine, but I didn't really like the business piece and I didn't want to do that. So I really like that part that all of that is taken care of by our business partners, part of the medical group.
And I'll just throw in on top of it, again, as an autonomous solo doc, I don't have a large staff that can do that. But as I told you, the summit that I went to, there are vendors there. So all of my patients are, I work with a group called Hint Health, who I've had wonderful success with. They sign up, they take care of all that paperwork. They do the work with collecting the money. So I have these other entities that I don't actually have in my office. They take a percentage of the money, but it's a small fraction for what I get out of it. And I don't have to worry about that. You just make sure you find the right vendors and you know exactly what you're getting into before you sign any contracts.
Great, thanks. And we've answered part of this question already before, but can anyone speak to, getting more involved in a leadership role in healthcare management and policy, and how you gained those skills, getting an additional degree if necessary, like an MPH or MBA, or also where do you find mentors to help support you in this training?
I'll go first really briefly. You can start with Colorado Medical Society if you need mentors, and most groups have mentors, or just ask somebody that they would probably love to be your mentor. And in terms of leadership, there's a lot of schools of thought. Are leaders born or are they made? I really feel like if that's something you want to do, go do it. Join a board of directors at the bottom level and get in as just a board member, and then learn how to do that. You can also get professional leadership coaching, which I also think is a great way to do it as well. So I always say, you don't get the experience first and then go do it. Get in on the bottom level and just go do it. You guys are smart, and you'll figure it out. Or you also might figure out that it's not for you. So I would say, just go. If you're interested, run for that board. Join that group and move from there.
Yeah, I would say you can't learn swimming by sitting on the deck without getting wet. You just get in there, right? So, but I mean, that's pretty useless. I would say get a start a subscription to Harvard Business Review. A lot of the leadership courses are frequently quoting these timeless articles that keep appearing every month from Harvard Business Review. You'll rapidly learn what's the framework and vocabulary for leadership. Then your curiosity will take over. But I think getting involved in organized medicine, CMS is a great way. I'm sure Brian can direct you into getting on committees, which are actively seeking those that are younger in their career to get you going sooner than later.
I just agree with all that's been said. My approach was, I think a friend of mine asked me to participate on a board, and I'm going like, really me? But it led to a marvelous opportunity to meet with a bunch of really smart people. This was with the back then Larimer County, now we're Northern Colorado. So that was through the Colorado Medical Society and the county medical societies, but there's also your specialty organizations. And I agree 100%. Raise your hand, volunteer, get in there. You will find, I anticipate, lots of value, and the work will be there, but I think it's very rewarding, gives you an inside view of what's happening.
Yeah, I'll second that as well. And just put in a little plug for our Medical Alumni Association board. I got involved as a student and stayed involved as Housestaff. And now I'm the president of the Medical Alumni Association, just like that. But and so just if there's something that you're interested in or want to learn more about, just get involved, because lots of organizations, even like our board, are really excited to work with recent grads, people who have a new perspective. And if you're interested in learning more about the Medical Alumni Association, we are certainly looking for people to get more involved. So few other questions that we have is, when you're thinking about like practice structure and what's a good fit, how do you account for the type of subspecialty, thinking like a surgical subspecialty or primary care? Are there considerations that are more specialty specific that you guys have encountered in your practice?
I'll just take a little bit of that. I don't really think so. You can find whatever model you want, unless these guys disagree with me. I really like being in that integrated system where, a dermatologist can call me and say, hey, I, have this woman who needs birth control pills. Can we just do something over the phone with that? Or, and I like that integrated model that we practice in. So, it really depends on what kind of structure kind of speaks to you. The other thing I have to say, and this was the best piece of advice given to me by my non-medical friends, the job you take right out of residency doesn't have to be the job you keep forever. If it doesn't work, move on.
Right. I liked Alan's slide about the culture. So when I joined the group, I was solo practice, kind of afraid of the market. I really, really liked the docs. What I found though is I never got to talk to them because it was such a dysfunctional system with FICOR. But that's the point. You really don't know what you're getting into until you get into it. Do diligence, do as much as you can to understand. But as Kim just said, if it doesn't make sense, don't be afraid. And that's, that was two big experiences with my system with insurance, was when I literally dropped, 90% of my insurance. I had a bunch of them, which were just crazy and it's hard. That's why we have so many administrators. But, I was going like, well, I guess the worst thing is to put me out of business. The best thing, I can basically be more sane. And when I went to the direct primary care, the same thing. I was willing to take a risk, but it was because I knew I needed to change. I knew I needed to do something to better take care of my patients and myself. And it was rewarding and worth it. And obviously you can't always guarantee, but don't be afraid. And the weird part to me, I'll stop, is that we're the ones that have the education, the knowledge, the capacity, yet we're in this rat cage that people are telling us what we have to do. And I just think it's time for the new generation to say enough is enough. We need to take care of patients. We need to take care of ourselves. and quit this insane profit system that's just going to drive us all into an early grave. So be bold.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, like over my career, I found myself working more at scale. I think that it's good. You have more people, you surround yourself with smart people, more friends, they're covering your call. You get sick, the practice keeps going, go on vacation, blah, blah. So there's something to scale. In terms of the integration, yeah, I can't approach what Kim has in Kaiser, but so you just need to build those relationships on your own, particularly with the subspecialists. And there's people that just, they're on the phone, right? They can create those connections and they make it work, but you have to build those relationships. Yes, they're on different EHRs, but we still send the notes, so we still make that work. But we spend like way too much on payer negotiations, contracts, making sure they're not playing their games with you, recovering that. It's just an inordinate amount of time. So I get what Dr. Carroll is doing. But again, with scale, then you have leverage against them when you're negotiating. So we're following a traditional path, but we're armored up. We're doing battle with them. But it's, do you want to do that forever as a healthcare system? That's a larger discussion. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much for all of your input. I think we're just nearly at about the end of the hour. So I really appreciate you guys coming today. And we know that the house staff have to get back to work. So thank you to our speakers for joining us today and for your insight on your practice structures. House staff, we appreciate you spending this last hour with us, and we hope that it was helpful for you and to share this information with your friends, because it will be recorded as a webinar. And I'd also like to invite you to join for our upcoming house staff and alumni networking night on Wednesday, May 11th from 5 to 7 at Ursula Brewery, which is just north of here, north of campus. So the house staff will have a chance to network with other alumni in person that evening, and the event is free, and appetizers and a beverage will be provided to all who register. And we'll also include that information in our follow-up email from this event today. So if you have any friends or colleagues that you would feel like enjoy these events, feel free to share that information. The recordings will be uploaded to our CU Anschutz Alumni YouTube channel very soon. And thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Bye.